Today we're gonna make a chocolate bourbon pecan tart. It has a tender, sweet sablé crust that has the texture of pecan pie, but with chocolate and bourbon, and it's just all baked inside a tart, which means you get more filling. You could serve it with creme anglaise or with your favorite vanilla bean ice cream. Perfect with Thanksgiving, Christmas, or just really any day, I would say. This is an any day tart. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new and delicious recipe. Let's get into it. So, first steps here obviously are to make our tart crust. We're gonna make a sucré. It's a slightly different recipe than the one that I have up there, but you can use either of them. This is AP flour, sugar, kosher salt, and butter, obviously. So this is cold, it is cubed, and now we're gonna cut it in. Unlike braisé, where you want kind of those streaks of butter, you do not want that in sucré, so you wanna go ahead and make sure that you are cutting it in 100%. It's gonna take a moment, so while that starts to do that, we are gonna whisk together our wet ingredients here. So go ahead and add your heavy cream, and your yolks, which I scaled in advance, and so I covered them with plastic wrap because yolks get that skin, and then it'll kind of actually, dry out, and you'll get clumps in your finished product if you don't cover them. Okay, give them a nice whisk. All we have to do is just wait for this to cut in completely, and then we're gonna add our wet ingredients and be on with it. All right, so it's about 10 minutes to be honest. And the only way to really tell if it's, done is to kind of put your hands in there and see it, like feel. Because sometimes, it looks like there's still chunks of butter, but it's actually just the dough sticking together and kind of looking like it's like clumping. And we are gonna go ahead and put all of this in here. We could do this while it's mixing. It doesn't really matter, but since we have it stopped, we might as well just do it. You can finish it by hand if you like, but since there's so much butter, it's, easy enough to just do it in the mixer. I mean, it's gonna look like cookie dough. There she is. You don't wanna overmix it. You still wanna be careful. Still AP flour, still gluten development. Still don't want any of that. Or a little bit, we want a little bit of that. But you can see that it's a nice, kind of beautiful dough. And that's what we want. Now, the only task left is to get all of this onto this. Just kind of gather it together. This honestly looks like it's gonna make way more than I need, but okay. That's what you get with old recipes. Okay. So I have made two, unbeknownst to myself. And I'm just gonna cut this in half. And I'm gonna save half for another use. I'm gonna wrap her up, put her in the freezer. Now I'm gonna go ahead and pat it flat because we want this to kind of chill quicker. So go ahead and just get it nice and flat. And then we're gonna chill this about 2 hours. 2 hours is a nice amount. You can of course make this ahead of time, up to a week in advance, and you can refrigerate it or you can freeze it for up to a couple months. So I'm gonna get this in the fridge and then we'll make our tart. All right, it is time to roll our pie crust. You can see that it's ready. I've got a bit of bench flour just for the top, and for my rolling pin, I have a French rolling pin. You could use a regular rolling pin, doesn't matter, whatever you're most comfortable with. And I'm gonna roll this out on a piece of parchment because it is to make it easier to put into the pie or the tart dish. Sometimes with these kind of sablés or sucrés, they can be a bit more crumbly. Same with like my almond pie crust, so I like to just kind of make it easier on myself. Let's get a little bit of bench flour on the top of our dough and on our rolling pin. This is just gonna make it not stick to my rolling pin. Do keep in mind the shape and size of your dish. So if you are gonna put this into a rectangular tart mold, then obviously you're gonna wanna keep it in a rectangle. Huh. Okay. Make sure it's not cracking down there. It's doing great things, doesn't matter. Okay. Now, the idea is that we're gonna get this to about 1/8 of an inch. It doesn't need to be any thinner than that. You kind of want you know, want a nice crust. The crust is, you know, sweet and it's really quite delicious. So, you know, you're gonna want it. At some point, I'm gonna go get my dish and make sure that this is actually going to fit in it. Now just be aware that this is sticking to the parchment, so that is making it a little bit more difficult to roll. But what we have to power through in the rolling, we are gonna more than make up with for the transfer into our dish. Let's go ahead and check how fat it is. Looking good there. It's a little bit chubby, just right here I can feel. And so I'm just gonna roll that this way. This is a 9-inch. This pie crust recipe will also fit a 10-inch. Okay, looks great, does it not? I think so. So, because we have rolled this out and she is soft, now she needs to go back in the fridge. It's not gonna take very long, just pop her back in there. It's only gonna take, you know, 10 minutes, a little chill time. But we wanna give her a moment to relax before we line our dish. Now, we've got our dish, we have our crust, and we are literally just going to, you guessed it, put it on top. Now, go ahead and just kind of peel off the paper, and then we'll take this, and we are just going to basically kind of fold, tuck and fold is kind of what I call it. You fold it over and make sure it hits the crease, and then you pull it back so that it, you know, creates a nice crease down there without having to push it in. And because also, you know, if you're pushing it, the more you manipulate it, the more the gluten is just going to develop and the less happy your crust is going to actually be. And that way you get that nice clean corner with very little effort and you get those beautiful slices. Just kind of repeat that all the way around. Now, kind of give it a nice, just like a little, just press it in. Don't press it aggressively, just a little bit, right? And now, and then let it kind of fall over the edge, like so. And now, the best way to get a nice clean finish is to use a rolling pin. Anyways, we're just gonna go ahead and run this along the edge like that. You're kind of just pressing and it's just cutting itself. Isn't that nice? But this way you get like a nice, beautiful edge. And then just kind of press that back down, because sometimes pressing with the rolling pin will kind of like compress it, and you don't want that. You want it to kind of be nice and tall and proud against the sides. I'm gonna put this back in the refrigerator while we make our filling. All right, we're gonna make our filling. Super duper easy. Get yourself a whisk. My favorite whisk is dirty, so I have to use my least favorite whisk. Why don't I just buy 2 of my favorites? I don't know. There's a Christmas gift idea for you guys. All right, so we're gonna start with our eggs. Give those a nice whisk. We're gonna beat these until they're a little bit frothy, obviously until they're fully mixed. Lovely. Now we're gonna add our butter, which has been melted. It's not crazy hot, but I am gonna whisk as I add it just in case. Kind of like you do when you temper egg yolks or egg whites when making on glaze or ice cream base or pastry cream. I mean, the list. And then we're gonna add our sugar. So this is granulated sugar. And this is dark brown sugar. And this is flour, so just regular AP flour. And then we've got a bit of corn syrup here. Now I've measured it into a bit of plastic wrap, and then I will kind of nip a little bit and squeeze it in so it's mess-free-ish. Moderately mess-free. Also, it means that whatever you scaled will actually end up in your dish as opposed to, you know, on the sides of your spatula and your bowl and everything that touches it. So, we're gonna whisk it. Get out all the lumps and bumps. Some of those lumps are dark brown sugar, and that's okay. You can either leave them or you can squish them. Okay, next, vanilla. Yeah. And bourbon, as promised, delivered, in she goes. There's a decent amount of it. You taste it in the final dish. So make sure you use a bourbon or whiskey that you like. And I'm gonna add my pecans. And just give those kind of a little toss. And now our filling is ready. Our pie is chilled and we're ready to finish assembling. So I've got mini chocolate chips here. I'm just gonna spread all down in the bottom. Try and get like them even. They're not gonna distribute themselves necessarily, so. And then we're gonna pour the filling on top. Go ahead and spread that out. And we are going to get this in our oven, which we have preheated to 325 convection or 350 regs. And we're gonna pop this in. It's gonna bake for about an hour until it kind of springs back and feels like Jell-O, gives a little resistance, but you don't wanna bake it till it's hard because then it's overbaked and you're gonna have like, it's gonna be like a jawbreaker. So in she goes. All right, our pecan bourbon tart is out. It's cooled, actually it puffed in the oven and it kind of settled. It baked about 30 minutes until when I pressed it, it gave some resistance, kind of felt like Jell-O and kind of jiggled like cheesecake when it's fully baked. So it's cooled about 30 minutes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and unmold it now while it's still a little warm, because not warm so that the crust isn't set, but like warm in the center so that the butter kind of releases easily from the pan, from the, the baking ring and stuff. It just makes it a lot easier to unmold. All right, so I'm just gonna pick her up and she's a little greasy, so be careful. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then hopefully she'll just slide right off her, hold on. Let me get an offset spatula to help me out. Okay. Now, if it doesn't wanna slide off easily, then you should 100% let it cool completely before transferring. Yeah, there she goes. All right. You see how it just kind of slid off because that's like, there's butter from the crust on there. So she's really just, she's still a little warm in the center, but just warm enough so that the crust is set and it slides easily off of the tart mold that you used. You don't have to do that. You can of course cool it completely in the pan. All right, it's time to try. She's cooled. I think, yeah, she's pretty cool. And we're ready to slice her. Oh man. I love pecan tarts so much. Okay, let's just look at this beauty. Do you see how thick that filling is and how like the chocolate chips actually have kind of like dispersed throughout, even though we only put them on the bottom? Oh my gosh, it's gonna be decadent, I can just tell. Wow. Be still my beating heart. You've got like the beautiful crunch of the pecans and this soft, tender crust. On the bottom, it's a little bit sweet. The filling is sweet, but not overwhelmingly sweet and cloying like some pecan pies. You get like a backdrop of bourbon. It's not overpowering, it's not in your face. It's just this wonderful warming quality that like really adds to the flavor but isn't overpowering. The chocolate chips, on the other hand, those are present and accounted for. It's like in every bite, super chocolatey, just rich and decadent with like the crunch of the pecans and like the way that the crust on top kind of like crystallized and like makes that like super crunchy pecan topping that's just like to die for. Yes, to die for.